Hey guys, so today I'm going to be doing my monthly wrap-up for January of 2021. So all of the books that I was able to get through in the month of January. This was a really interesting month for me. I had some books I really enjoyed, I had some books I really hated, and we're just gonna break them down and go through them. So I got through 6 books this month. I have 2 of them with full reviews on my channel. I'll throw some up in the cards for you guys. So those I won't talk too much about. Other books were earlier releases, so I only really put reviews for books from like 2020 and 2021. So anything that's like relatively new I do reviews for. But yeah, let's dive right in. Okay, so the first book that I have is Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. I got this book in an unplugged box back in, I think, October of 2020, something around then. I had never heard of T. Kingfisher before, and then I ended up doing a full review on this book. This was a 4-star read for me. I really loved this book. The premise is really interesting. It's about a recently divorced woman and her friend who is a barista who discover that her uncle's Oddities Museum has a portal to another dimension in it. It's got some body horror, it's got some cosmic horror. It's really different. I haven't ever read anything quite like this. I know a lot of people find it really scary. I didn't find it personally super scary, but I did find it really fun. And it made me really interested to read more of T. Kingfisher's work. Again, I have a full video, an in-depth review on this, so if you guys want to check out all of my thoughts on this book, you can check it out there. But this book was fabulous. So happy I got this in my unplugged box. It's a really good like Halloween read, I would say. It's definitely creepy. If you're into like oddities parlors, taxidermy, cryptids, this is a great book for you. Alright, next up was another 4-star read. This is Bone White by Ronald Malfi. This is supposed to be one of his like wintry stories. Ronald Malfi does a lot of twists on like cliches. So his book Snow is kind of his take on zombies. This I read thinking it was a Wendigo story, so there is a lot of I don't want to say allusions to the Wendigo, but there's a lot of like Wendigo lore in here, and there's a lot of like mysticism. It does take place in the Alaskan wilderness. I really loved this book. I really like Malfi's writing. I wasn't crazy about the ending, which is what took this from a 5-star read to a 4-star read. It felt very rushed to me. But one of the things I love about Ronald Malfi is he's so good at creating an eerie setting, and this takes place, like I said, in the Alaskan wilderness, but it also takes place in a small town right on the edge of the Alaskan forest. And just the town and the townspeople and the isolation created in that setting was just so bone-chilling and eerie, and the setting just felt like a character in and of itself. Anyway, the premise of this story is about a man named Paul Gallo who finds out that his brother, who had disappeared about a year ago, may be a body that was dug up and found when a serial killer confesses to killing a whole slew of people up in Alaska. So he travels to Alaska to see if one of the bodies is his brother and try and basically figure out what happened to his twin and why he disappeared. It's not a very predictable book, which I really like. It does have some really cool main characters, and I really like the camaraderie and the use of like twin telepathy in this book to basically tell part of its tale. It's really fun. Again, the setting is what really makes this what makes this book stand apart. It is an amazing winter read. I know we've got one more month left of winter, so I do highly recommend picking this one up. It is creepy, and it will make you want like a big snuggly warm jacket and to never go to a little tiny town in the middle of nowhere in Alaska. I can tell you that. Okay, next up was Fairest Flesh by K.P. Kolsky. This is a book I received in, I believe, my December 2020 Nightworms package. I do have a full review on this book up on my channel as well. This was a 2020 release, and it is currently a contender for the Bram Stoker Awards of 2020. I hated this book. This was a 2-star read for me. I found it to be such a letdown. Like, what I thought it was going to be about, it had nothing to do with. So this is basically supposed to be a little glimpse into the life of Elizabeth Bathory, who's also known as Elizabeth Bathory, the Blood Countess of Hungary. She is known to be one of the largest mass murderers in history. Real historical figure, and it's something I'm really, really interested in. However, this book is just a fictional cash grab, in my opinion. It really wanted to take a lot of liberties with side characters and other fairy tales and throw a lot of things that didn't happen into this book and make it seem like it was kind of, I don't even want to say glamorous, just this really over-the-top story involving like witches and poison apples and all this stuff that just didn't need to be in here. And unfortunately, it's definitely people, the author definitely used Elizabeth Bathory's name to get people interested in this book, but this book is not about Elizabeth Bathory. And I think that's where my biggest problem was, is that there's no story arc about Elizabeth. She's just kind of this side character who drives the purpose of the main characters. And on top of that, almost all of the main characters are truly, truly horrific human beings. There is so much pedophilia and rape and incest in this book, and it is just disgusting, in my opinions. And the editing in this book was also pretty terrible. I mean, there are just typos on like every other page or added words, and it felt really to me, and I said this in my review, like this was just a draft for what could have been a really, really good book. So I wanted to like this book, and I couldn't like it. I found so many flaws with it, and I can't say I recommend it. So this was a huge letdown for me, unfortunately. Okay, and then next up, we have The Witching Hour by Anne Rice. I know a lot of people love Anne Rice. I'm sure many people who watch my channel like Anne Rice. I'm going to come right out and say that I don't like Anne Rice. I tried reading Interview with a Vampire a couple years ago, and I couldn't finish it. I wasn't a fan of the style. I thought it slogged on. I thought she was very wordy. And that's how I felt about this. So this book is about, I think it's 965 pages. I read it as part of a book club I am in. I am in the Women in Black book club, which is a like witch-themed book club, horror-themed book club. And this was our January book, so I did feel compelled to finish it, but had I not been in this book club, I literally would have stopped reading it at like page 150, I would say, is about where I would have just given up completely. And here's my issue with The Witching Hour. The Witching Hour is way too wordy, and similar to Fairest Flesh, it makes pedophiles, rapists, and willing participants in incest heroes. And I don't like that. That is something that to me is never a heroic action. None of those are ever heroic actions. They should not be written off as like, but this person did a lot of good, so we can overlook some of those things. So that was the biggest turnoff to me. On top of that, there wasn't a single character in this book that I liked. It's just under 1,000 pages. There are so many characters. There's an entire history that dates back to like the 1600s worth of characters in this book, and there wasn't a single character that I was like, I'm rooting for you. I like you. And then when you get down to like the core of it all, I understand that Anne Rice, I believe, was going through like a period of like extreme devout Christianity when she wrote this book. At least I think that these overlap. And so this book has a lot of anti-abortion undertones in it, which that's fine. If that's her opinion, power to you, that's fine. But then she kind of goes on this sidetrack where the vast majority of this book, you don't realize it at the time, ends up being this like metaphor as to why Anne Rice believes that stem cell research is punishable by death. And that just didn't quite sit well with me. Because while she's saying those types of messages, at the same time, again, she's making these horrible, horrible people her main characters we are supposed to side with and like, and they're doing awful, awful, awful things, like raping their daughters, constantly. That's like, that happened so many times in this book that it's just nauseating. And then another big issue I had with this book that I can't even, it made me so angry. The amount of cultural appropriation that Anne Rice puts into this book is unacceptable in my mind. This is the tale of witches from Scottish and French descent who throughout the entire book are called voodoo queens. And that's not okay. That's not okay. I don't really like the way Anne Rice speaks about the black characters in this book as well. They are almost always servants. They are almost always slaves, depending on the time period. And they are always categorized as like that black woman, that black man. And that's not okay with me at all. And then on top of that, to then make a white man in this book to be like considered like a voodoo king when he's not, he's Scottish, really it just very much took me out of it. And I was very disappointed in this book. I was very disappointed in Anne Rice. Again, absolutely no likable characters. I couldn't stand Michael and Rowan. I thought their whole love story was just so unbelievable. It felt like a cheesy Tinder conversation every time they spoke to one another. People might believe in love at first sight, but I do not believe that they were love at first sight after the way that this book went down. So I hated this. I will never recommend this. I really wish I hadn't even finished reading it. This is not a good book. I'm sorry if you like it. You are entitled to your opinion, but this is not a book that I vibe with at all. Okay, but that's okay, because then my last two books were good. I had fun with my last two books. So, second to last, we have Kramen Manor by Darcy Coates. I'm slowly becoming a huge fan of Darcy Coates. This was a 4-star read for me. This story is about Daniel. There's a lot of Daniels that I read about in these books this time. So the story is about a guy named Daniel who goes from basically being homeless to being the gardener and the landscaper for this abandoned manor or mansion. And he's never seen anybody in the mansion, and he hasn't been able to figure out who is paying him or how he has been hired. And then slowly weird things start happening, like in his little cottage on the property, someone's always knocking at the door at midnight. There's people that he sees in the tower, but he's been told he can't go to the tower. Just little things like that. So this is Darcy Coates to me is very like cute and cozy horror. Like she's very good palate cleanser, I would say. If you're really into like some darker stuff, she's a great book to like pop in between, like something like, I don't know, like a Stephen King and a Peter Straub, like pop a Darcy Coates in there and it's going to be a happy ending and it's going to be cute and it's going to be creepy and you're going to love the characters and it's going to just it's almost like YA horror, but just not. Like it's got the sentimentality of YA horror, but it's you can still read it as an adult and not feel like you're reading about teenagers, because you don't. Like the characters in this are always adults. I really liked Kramen Manor. I thought it was really cute. Definitely a unique concept. I saw somewhere that somebody said that this book is more fantasy than horror, and I get that there's a lot of fantasy like elements in it, but it's still about kind of ghostly, demonic style creatures. There is murder. There is some horror elements to this that I think make it more horror than fantasy, 100%. So this, big fan of, highly recommend Darcy Coates. I just picked up 2 more of her books that I will be reading. I'm planning on doing like a little author spotlight on her in the future as well, because I do think she writes in a very unique horror style and she's worth talking about. Okay, and then last but not least is Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. If you've seen my channel before, you know that I love Grady Hendrix. I really enjoy his writing. I think he's really different and original in his concepts. I also think he's very funny. So this book is basically a haunted house story if that haunted house happened to be an IKEA. Instead of IKEA, it is a store called Orsk, which is basically, I think, how they were able to write about IKEA without any kind of copyright infringement. This book is really funny. I will say that it perfectly captures what being lost in IKEA is like 100% that feeling of like, I swear I've walked by this like living room set like 3 times already, or like when you get lost in the warehouse section. Like, this book has that down. If you've ever worked in retail, this book nails the feeling of dread and customer service and annoying managers and like weird store scripts and policies that you have to adhere to. Like, I used to work in a Sephora, I worked in an American Eagle, I worked in a Hot Topic. Hot Topic was great, I will say that. But this nails that whole corporate retail world. This is definitely my least favorite of the Grady Hendrix books. My rankings are usually My Best Friend's Exorcism, Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and then of course Horror Store. And this was, I believe, his like breakout novel. So it's fine that he was still getting like a bearing on writing horror, I guess. But it's definitely not his strongest. It does slog a little bit at the beginning, and the ending is kind of cheesy, which his endings usually aren't cheesy. They're usually a little bit gut-wrenching. This one is not. This is like very cute, wrap it up with a nice little neat bow. But it is funny. There's definitely a few plot holes in this book. But it's a really quick read. I read it in like a day and a half, 2 days, and I would definitely recommend it. Again, this is a 4-star read for me, but on like the Grady Hendrix level of things, it is his weaker of the books that I've read, but it is very, very, very fun. It's a really cool concept, and it really nails the horror that is working in retail. So I loved this. I had a lot of fun with it, and it literally looks like an IKEA magazine. Like, this book is just ridiculous. Anyway, love that. The back is also awesome, so you get like I don't know if you can really see this, the like kind of okay with the creepy ghost in there, and then like all the havoc that's been wreaked upon the store afterwards. This was fun. Anyway, so yes, that is my January wrap up. So we had some really good reads, some really bad reads, no 5-star reads this time. Gonna try and change that for February. It's the shortest month of the year, but I'm gonna try to get at least 5 books in, hopefully more. I will not be reading a big 1,000-pager that I hopefully don't hate next month, so fingers crossed on that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit that like and the subscribe button down below. And you guys can also check me out on Goodreads. I have that link down below. It'll go through my whole reading challenge, and I put in-depth reviews on every single book that I read there as well, if you were interested, because I don't review every book that I post on my channel. You guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.